Have a hard time hearing, so this is...
All right, good evening. Thank you, Sandy, for getting us started. Good evening. So glad to be here with such great friends here in our beautiful sanctuary to have our Wednesday night Bible study. But as always, never take you at home for granted. Thank you for also blessing us, taking the time to join us during this Bible study. Hope you're joining us live. If not, you're catching us later on this week. But thank you, and thank you to those who are here with me in person. Well, let's open up our Bibles. We're going to go to Acts chapter 25. We're going to pick up with verse 23 now. So go to Acts 25 and go to verse 23. And while we're opening up our Bibles, let's open up with the word of prayer. Gracious, loving Heavenly Father, again, thank you for the gift of this day. It has been a blessing to be able to just go through, do the things that had to be done, needed to be done, we wanted to do today. But then to end it all by coming here together to just study your word and be one with each other with you. So bless this time, dear God, this evening of coming to study your word. Bless us and lead us and guide us now as we give ourselves to you. And ask this as always in your holy, your mighty, and your very precious name. Amen. Amen. All right, recap from last week. We looked at verses 10 to 12 of chapter 25 last week, talking about Paul's response to Festus when he asked him, do you want to go to Jerusalem? I'll take you to Jerusalem. Let you be tried there, with, of course, Festus being the one who would preside as judge. And we talked about Paul's response. We've seen Paul through Acts become angry. We've seen him keep his cool. But overall, we get this feeling now he's now become frustrated. He's grown tired of being that ball in this political football game that's been going on now for over 2 years between the Roman governors and the Jewish religious leaders, okay? He's tired of it. And so when he asked him that, when Festus says, you want me to take you to Jerusalem, he doesn't just rebuke it, okay? He basically refuses it by telling the Roman governor off in his own way. And then remember how he made his appeal, and now be tried before the emperor, for Caesar. And in doing it, he made those 3 specific points before Festus. That first off, that he's not guilty of any crime against the Jews. More importantly, Festus knows it. Festus knows, he can see for himself that he's not guilty. Second, Paul pointed out if he'd done anything worth the death penalty, he would gladly accept it. But he hadn't done anything to deserve the death penalty. And since that's the case, that does not give Festus the right then to hand him over to his Jewish enemies so he can take him and murder him. And then third, Paul points to Festus that he has no reason. I don't have to go to Jerusalem to stand trial before a Roman governor. I'm already doing it. I'm already here right now. And remember, he talked about how it was necessary for him to be judged. And he uses that Greek word again, dei. It means it was divinely necessary. It was part of God's plan that he do this. And then verse 12, we talked about all the reasons why Festus, consulted his advisors. The bottom line, Festus is now in a no-win, lose-lose situation. But if you remember, we talked about also, in the middle of it all, we talked about why Paul makes the statement that he has also committed no crime against the emperor, against Caesar. So far, it's all been about Jewish law. This is the one time he addresses an issue, a charge, dealing with Roman law. And even though he hasn't committed a crime even under Roman law, he has to do it. Because to appeal to the emperor, they're not going to send him to the emperor to stand in front of him to be charged by Jewish laws. The emperor would just turn him away. He has to have a Roman charge, okay? And then we just finished looking at all the 6 different ways that, that Festus tried then to cover himself there in verses 13 to 22. So now what I want to do is we're going to pick up with things that are going on. Basically, if you remember, look there at verse 22, where Agrippa says to Festus, close that part, I would like to hear the man himself. Tomorrow, Festus said, you will hear him. So now join me picking up with verse 23 through 27 with me. So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, and they entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then Festus said, King Agrippa, and all here present with us, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish community petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death, and when he appealed to his imperial majesty, I decided to send him. But I have nothing definite to write to our sovereign about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. For it seems to me unreasonable to send a prisoner without indicating the charges against him. All right, let's pick up now verse 3. So the next day comes. The next day following, King Agrippa, telling Festus he wants to see him. He liked to talk to Paul himself. And as we see there in verse 23, there are three things basically that are going on at this point. Three things revolve around in this one verse. First off, Luke points out what concerning Agrippa and Bernice? What does he point out concerning them? Look there in verse 23.
Great pomp and circumstance.
All right. So they enter this thing how? With great pomp. The Greek word used there is pageantry. So the thing is, first off, they're doing this, they're making a what?
Big deal of it.
Making a big deal of it, but they're also making a what? A show.
Yeah.
They're making a show here. Because you see, this is something that the Herods, remember he's Herod Agrippa. There is Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, Herod Antipas, Herod Agrippa the First, and now we're dealing with Herod Agrippa the Second. They love this pageantry stuff because it makes them feel what?
Important.
Important. And it's sad, you gotta depend on something like that to make you feel important. But I want you to think about this. I want you to remember that because they're wanting to make themselves feel important because personally they're also at the height of their political career. But remember that important thing. Now the second thing we are told there in verse 23 is going on, that they are gathered where? Now this is going to be important. They're gathered in what place?
Into the place of the hearing.
Okay, place of the hearing? Anybody got it? Okay. Mine says the audience hall. Or anybody got audience room hall?
Auditorium.
Auditorium. That's the Greek word. The Greek word is auditorium. And it's believed that what they're actually meeting at is Herod's praetorium. I think it was Herod the Great that built this in Caesarea. It was supposed to be in his place to live, but once Rome is there, the Romans have now taken it over. It's now the governor's palace. It's his place of residence. Okay? So, very important place they're meeting. And then the third thing, the military tribunes and commanders, along with who are now meeting there?
Principal men of the city.
Okay, commanders, prominent men of the city. And these prominent men are probably made up of who? But what two groups?
Businessmen.
Huh?
Businessmen.
Well, businessmen, but I'm thinking along the lines of, what have we been always talking about? What's the two groups of people? There's the Jews, and then there's the
Romans.
Well, the Romans. Okay, Romans. I can't hear Romans. How about Gentiles? We've been, for a year now, we've been going through Acts, and that time it's Jews and Gentiles.
Mine says captains and principal.
All right. Very thing is, no matter how you got it, these are prominent people. But the thing I want you to realize, they're in Caesarea, and even though this is in Israel area and everything, Jesus spent a lot of time there. Still, a lot of Jews and a lot of Romans who are prominent people. They all have their businesses there, okay? So we have the pomp and circumstance showing importance. We're in an important location, and we got important people that are there, okay? Now, as we go past this now, but remember these things. Now, there are two things, though, that are often talked about concerning how Luke points all this out. You see, for some, they see this as, what kind of Old Testament story? Here we have Paul standing in front of the king in a very important place, prominent people. We call this what kind of story? A David and Goliath story. Okay? You know, we see this David and Goliath, how this poor traveling tent maker missionary from Tarsus is now getting ready to stand in Herod's praetorium before such a distinguished, prominent group of people. But the main thing is to look at it like that. Here's this tent maker missionary standing this. It also reminds us of what other event? What other event should this remind us of? How about that time when the poor carpenter from Bethlehem stood in front of Herod Antipas, there in the Roman place and everything? Isn't it funny how when we get more to this, Paul's story starts becoming more and more reflection. Because why? Because Paul is willing to do what Jesus has called him to do, even when he has to face consequences like this. Well, like I said, there's this poor carpenter of Bethlehem who stood in a similar position before one of the Herods. But for most of us, when you read about that pomp and pageantry concerning how King Agrippa II Bernice entered the auditorium, see, along with it being this palace filled with not only kings, but you got the Roman governor, along with what kind of Jews and Gentiles we said?
Christian.
Huh?
Christian?
No, remember, we just looked at it. We just talked about that. They're tribunes, they're commanders, and what captains, and what else did
Principals.
Principal man of the city.
Huh?
Principal man.
They're prominent people. You got the important folks, okay? The bottom line is, most of us, maybe except Mr. Robert, the rest of us wouldn't be invited to something like this. Okay?
What?
But the bottom line, okay, they're with us. But where in Acts should this moment take us back to? Think for a moment. Or if you will, join me in Acts chapter 9. Look at Acts chapter 9 with me. You just flip back. It's going to take just a few pages there. And go to Acts chapter 9. This is where the very first time we are told about the conversion story of Paul, where Jesus meets Paul on the road to Damascus. Not Emmaus, but Damascus. Okay? That's a personal joke between me and Sandy. Now look at verse 13. Remember, Jesus has come to Ananias, told him to go to Paul. He said, no, he kills Jews. I'm not going. But look at verse 13. But Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all who invoke your name. But the Lord said, Jesus said to him, go, for he is an instrument who I have chosen to bring my name before Gentiles and who? Kings. And before who?
People of
The
Israel.
people of Israel. You see, with this, Paul is now about to do what? Fulfill what?
The mission.
Well, fulfill the words of Jesus. That he spoke to him concerning the mission. The work that he has always planned to do. Which is to take the message of the gospel, not just to the Jews, not to the Gentiles, not just to the prominent people, the religious leaders, but also to who? To kings. See, for the first time, Paul's now about to do what? Stand before a king. You know, this is all coming together. God has a plan. God has a purpose. And if you and I are willing just to get in on it and to stay in on it like Paul has, even when it means you got to stand before people like this, if we'll do it, God will see us through. That's what we got to remember from all of this. Now look at verse 24 with me. Now here Luke shares with us now 3 very specific things in this verse. Okay, first off, Luke makes sure to point out what concerning the way that Festus addresses Paul before King Agrippa. Does he say Paul, or what does he say? What does yours say? Now, I know what the New Living Translation says, so hold on, Sandy, we'll come to that one. But it should be in the rest of ours. You got 2 options.
All men, mine say all men which are here present with us.
All right, but there's something a little bit more specific in this verse, in verse 24. And Festus said, King Agrippa and all here present with you, see who? Anybody got this man?
This man.
This man or this one. Now, New Living Translation tells us this is the man, okay? But it's the Greek that tells us that it is this one. Now, why should that stand out to us? That he simply says, this one. Well, see, to refer to someone back in this time by simply saying, this man, if I'm talking about Jack and I say, this man or this one has done this. Back in this time, and don't use their name, this was seen as doing what to a person?
Humiliating.
Very good. It's an insult. This is an insult to the one that you're speaking about. Or as my Wesleyan biblical commentary says, to speak to someone this way, to implicitly or to discreetly belittle or put down somebody. So, what is this? We now learn what about Festus and Paul? Festus doesn't have what for Paul?
Respect.
Any respect. He really hadn't respected the man in the first place. One of the reasons why he keeps ignoring everything. But see, the thing is, he's putting him down by simply saying this man or this woman. Now, second, Festus now makes what kind of specific claim here? He tells Agrippa what? What specific claim? That the what?
That he shall not live any longer?
Okay, now go not that far. Now I know the New Revised Standard, NIV, says that the whole Jewish community.
All the multiples
had
of
petitioned.
Jews.
NLT says demanded by all Jews before here and in Jerusalem. And hold on to yours, Jack, for a moment. What does yours say?
A multitude of Jews.
No, I want to say, hold on, Jack.
A multiple of Jews. A multiple of Jews have to dealt with
Okay,
me.
yours is very similar, okay? All right. So the thing is, basically, another way it's saying is what? That everyone is saying what? The exact same thing. Now, here's the thing. Always beware when somebody comes up to you and says, everybody is saying this. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. 9 times out of 10, it's only 1 or 2 people that have said it. But see, you want to back it up, so you come up and say, I hear it all the time in churches that I've served. You know, everybody is saying it. When I start asking, well, tell me, who are some? Well, you know, I can't tell you. I promised I wouldn't tell you. You promised everyone that you wouldn't tell me? So the thing is, but let's look at what's really going on. In the Greek text, it goes along with the King James Version, and it goes also with Denise's version. All right? The Greek word is plethos, and it means, as the King James, it says that word multitude. Now, what Bible have you got, Denise?
King James.
King James, okay, that's it then. So y'all's King James has that word multitude. But now, plethos in the Greek can mean actually a little bit something different from multitude. In the Greek, when Luke uses it, it's actually a reference to just a group or crowd of people. Okay? So what he's actually saying is there's a group or a crowd of people, not an entire community. But there's an argument, though, to be made about what he's saying here. Now go back to verse 15, where Festus originally tells Agrippa what? There in verse 15 of this chapter.
The leading priests and Jewish elders.
All right, so
are
it's just
pressing
the
charges.
leading priests, chief priests, elders, maybe the high priest who spoke to him, okay?
Informed me.
Huh?
It says informed me.
Informed me, okay. But remember now, there's a big difference between the whole Jewish community and these priests and everything. So, but is Festus wrong then? Because see, there's an argument. And just don't like it when the bad guy can be proven right. But the bad guy in the story. But he might have been right. Because there's an argument in support of Festus saying here that when he says the entire Jewish community, what he's saying is that these chief priests, these leading priests, these leaders came to me and for Festus, they represent what?
Jewish people.
Huh?
All All the Jewish people.
All the Jewish community. So they represent everybody. So a lot of people will say that he really wasn't exaggerating. Means one time he hadn't exaggerated, right? Or hadn't just told a lie. One time he may be telling the truth. But like I said, it's tough having to hit the bad guy, showing that he may be right, but it could have been that way. But let's look at the third thing in this. Now, Festus points out that not only did the Jews petition for Paul to be tried, to be killed, that they're also doing what? What's the other thing that they're doing besides making this petition to Festus? They're also doing what? There toward the end, it's at the very end of verse 24.
They're crying that he ought not to live any longer.
Okay, they're doing what? Say that again?
They're crying out that
Crying out. That's it. They're shouting. Now, why is it important to know that they're shouting? They're crying out that Paul should not live anymore. It just shows they're what?
Close to a riot.
Huh?
Close to a riot.
Yeah, that's right. Well, see, in Rome hates riots.
Yeah.
Really.
The thing is, but it just shows the intensity or the forcefulness in which they truly believe what?
He ought to be murdered.
That Paul ought to be murdered. That Paul needs to be killed. That's how strong, how adamant they are with this. They're shouting. Once again, who does this remind us of? Who does it remind us of?
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Remember? Crucify him. Crucify him. They shouted. They cried out. The same thing. I just always wondered, what is Paul thinking during all this? Because most likely, he was around. He was a student in Jerusalem all of his life. He had to have been there.
Yeah.
And just think, maybe the flashbacks that he has. And I think he has to kind of smile. You know, when we're called in a situation, what kind of flashbacks do we have? Of times when we honored Jesus, or the times we said, no, I'm not going to do it, and we've done our own way. Now look at verses 25 and 26 with me. But let's now now we're going to get to your homework assignment from last week. Remember, I gave you a homework assignment last week. Now start off, look at verse 25 with me. Now as we see here in this verse, once again, what is the one thing that Festus has conveniently left out at this point? Once again, he has not mentioned his what?
Innocence.
Huh?
His innocence.
No?
It's worthy of why he should be put to death.
Yeah, okay. But he's also left out what little detail? He's also left out, once again, his offer to take Paul where?
To Jerusalem.
Back to Jerusalem to stand trial. He just kind of conveniently left that out. Instead, once again, he makes it sound like what? That he actually wanted to do what for Paul?
Help.
Release him.
He wanted to help him.
Oh.
He wants to help Paul, release him through all this. But Paul is the one that's done what?
Insisted.
Huh? That means, but Paul has also done what? Paul's the one who won.
He had to appeal for himself.
He had made the appeal for himself. You're all right. But if from Festus's point of view, what he's made it sound like is, I wanted to help him, but Paul, he messed up. Paul messed up any chance for me to help him because he's now gone off and done what? Made his what?
Appeal.
Appeal to the emperor, okay? That he wants to help him. So he's made his appeal, and now it's out of his hands. But personally, I'm sure at this moment, Festus is also kind of saying a little prayer of thanks. Because it's out of his hands now at this point, okay? But even though it's out of Festus's hands, all right, and he can be thankful, he still has one major problem that's staring him right in the face. Now look at verse 26. And it's within this verse that we now find the answer to last week's question. Remember I asked you, why would a top-level Roman governor need the help of a lowly Jewish king? Remember, he's the governor. They just kind of they placate the Jews. Let them kind of have their little stuff and things like that. As long as they don't start a riot, we're okay. You know, why does a top-level Roman governor need the help of a Jewish king? And the answer is what? You see, Festus now finds himself in the same situation that Lysias found himself when he was trying to send Paul to Caesarea to see the governor Felix. Festus now has to do the same thing that Lysias was going to do, which was to what? Write a report. He's got to write a letter to his superior. Lysias writing it to the governor. Festus has now got to write it to the emperor's superior, explaining the charges against Paul, but here's the problem. Festus is not what? He's the same thing as Lysias is and that Felix is. Festus is not a what?
Man of power?
Huh?
Man of power?
But he's a man of power. He's the governor. But he's also not a what? A Jew.
Oh, a Jew.
He's not a Jew. And so, not being a Jew, just like Lysias and Felix are, he has no idea about what?
Jewish law.
Jewish law. So he has no idea how to do what?
Write the letter.
Write the letter. You write the letter. Because you see, to not send a letter, this is his problem. To not send a letter or even send a letter without any kind of detail concerning the situation would have been seen as a dereliction of duty according to Roman law. Okay, or to Roman government. Especially if that letter concerns who? What kind of person? And what is Paul? Yes, he's Jewish. Yes, he's Christian. But he is also
Roman.
What kind of Roman?
Citizen.
Huh?
Roman citizen.
He's an uncondemned Roman citizen. Remember that he hadn't been found guilty of anything. He's an uncondemned Roman citizen. And so if he sends Paul there, and the emperor finds out, Caesar finds out that he hadn't even been condemned about anything, and there's no letter, all right? This could result in Festus' political future being gone before it even gets started. Because they're going to see him as what? Inept. Unable to do the job. Okay? So this could get his political future gone. But now here's the thing. Is that the real reason why he needs Festus' help? Is this the real answer to the question? Well, see, to help him write this letter to the emperor, to Caesar, you know, Festus really wants Agrippa to help him. But for us to understand Festus' real reason for coming to Agrippa, it can actually be found in one word that should be in most of your translations. One specific word there in verse 26. One word that Felix uses in reference to Agrippa. Now, follow along with me there in verse 26. See if you can tell me what word I'm talking about. He says, Festus is talking, but I have nothing definite to write to our sovereign, to the emperor, to Caesar about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. Now, what word did most of you have, or a form of the word in your versions that I also had in mind? Did you see the word?
Especially.
Huh?
Especially.
Especially. Or, y'all, the King James, you have the word specially, right?
Yeah.
All right, especially, or especially. You see, more important, it's the way that Festus says this, especially before you, King Agrippa. Now, to get where I'm going here with this, I want us to look at the Greek text again. Because it's hopefully this gives us a little better understanding of what Festus' true intention is in asking for Agrippa's help. Now, in the Greek, it reads this way. Therefore, I brought forward him before you, the plural tense, all the people that was there. Therefore, I brought forward him before you, and above all, before you, King Agrippa. You see, yes, he wants his help concerning, he wanted to bring this to Agrippa concerning Paul in hopes that Agrippa can help him write a letter to the emperor explaining everything about Paul. But with Agrippa, also not only being Jewish, he's also a what? He is royalty. He's a king. Okay? He's not just a Jewish, he's a Jewish king. Then what is believed is what Festus is really seeking to do at this point is more politically motivated. Okay? Now remember, what's one of the things I told you about when we first met Festus a couple of weeks ago? What's one of the things I told you about Festus? That he liked having what kind of relationship with the Jews, his constituents. He has what kind of relationship with them? He has a good one. He has a good, open relationship with them. Not like Felix. Felix liked killing the Jews. Festus has a good, open relationship with them, okay? So the problem that Festus is now facing is what? You see, Festus wants to please his Jewish constituents by finding Paul what? He wants to find Paul what? Guilty. And then could help them, help his Jewish citizens, then do what? Put Paul
Put him to death.
Put him to death, or I said to murder him. But Festus' hands are tied because he can't find Paul guilty under what? Roman law. Remember, it always got to go back to Roman law. The charges against him have always been about Jewish law, except that one about the emperor. Everything else, so he can't do it. And so the last thing he wants to do is send someone to the emperor who's only been charged with breaking what?
Jewish law.
Jewish laws. So he is seeking Agrippa's help basically to hopefully do one of two things. First off, to help him find a way to find Paul what? Guilty. He'd still like to help find him guilty. Maybe Agrippa, being Jewish and a Jewish king, can help him find Paul guilty under Jewish law so he could then hand him over. He could hand him over, thus doing them a favor. But here's the thing that's really believed. What if he could somehow get Agrippa to do what? What if Festus can get Agrippa to do what? To be the one who does what?
Writes the letter.
That's a good point, but that's not the one I'm looking for. I don't think that would do the trick, to be honest with you, but that's a good point. But what if he could get Agrippa to be the one who does what? Who declares Paul to be innocent. And to let him go. Then that would do what?
It'd be out of his hands.
Take the political heat off of him. Because then he could then say to his Jewish constituents, hey, it wasn't me, it was your king that let him go. It wasn't me. Hey, like passing the buck, don't we? We get somebody else to do our dirty work, we're going to get them to do it. And that's what's going on. So that's why he really needs him. Because either Festus can hopefully give him something to help him write the letter. Find him guilty under Jewish law. But more importantly, what if I can just get Agrippa to do my dirty work for me? All right? But then look at verse 27. Now it is within this verse that we now find Festus's true motivation, though in needing Agrippa's help. Now in most versions, it reads that Festus believes that it would be what? To send a letter to the emperor.
Unreasonable.
Okay, unreasonable. Most of you, I think, will have unreasonable. It'd be unreasonable to send a letter to the emperor without knowing what the charges are himself. But in the Greek text, we can learn a little bit more concerning what Festus is actually thinking, okay? See, in the Greek text, the word Luke records of Festus using, it is a logos. A logos can be translated as unreasonable. Some of you might have had the word illogical. But a more direct interpretation of a logos is the word foolish. So the real reason as to why Festus is desperate to have Agrippa help him in any way is what? That he doesn't want to appear what? You don't want to appear foolish, especially before who? You don't want to appear foolish before the emperor, who is definitely someone that you don't want to look foolish in front of, because he holds your future. He holds your political career in his hand. So the thing is, he's doing all of it because he don't want to appear foolish in front of the emperor himself. Because if he sends a letter that doesn't make sense or doesn't have the proper charges, then he's going to end up looking foolish, and his political career could then be over. So we have it all coming together now. Now, if we will, go to the next chapter. Go to chapter 26 with me. And what I want to do is we continue on to the next part of this. Paul comes on the scene. I want to read verses 1 through 3 now. 1, 2, and 3 of chapter 26. So Agrippa said to Paul, "You have permission to speak for yourself." Then Paul stretched out his hand and began to defend himself. "I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa, I am to make my defense today against all the accusation of the Jews, because you are especially familiar with all the customs and controversies of the Jews. Therefore, I beg of you to listen to me patiently." All right. Now, in verse 1 of chapter 26, we now have two specific things that are going on. First off, in the opening part of verse 1, the first thing that we see happens is what? Who now takes over this gathering?
Agrippa.
Agrippa does. Agrippa is the one who gives Paul permission to speak. Now, why should that stand out to us? Why should it stand out? Well, there's all this, once again, where is it taking place? In a Roman what? Auditorium, room, audience room, in a Roman building, or more specifically, a Roman governor's palace. And with this being a Roman situation, who would normally be the one that would preside over everything and be the only one who gives someone permission to speak? Who would normally do that?
The king.
Well, not the king.
The governor.
Remember, where are we at?
The governor.
The governor. He's the Roman authority. So it would be the Roman one, the governor. So for Festus to simply step back and let Agrippa take over, being the one who can give Paul permission to speak, that tells us what then about Festus? Just tells us how what?
Weak.
Huh?
He's weak.
Yeah.
He's weak, but he's also now what?
Worthless.
Huh?
Worthless.
I'm thinking something a little bit different.
Uninterested.
I'm thinking about the word desperate.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
desperate.
It's just showing us how desperate Festus is at the moment. Like I said, his political career is on the line. And he's desperate to do whatever it takes to protect it. Even if he has to kind of step back and make Agrippa feel what? Important. Okay? Now we're about to get to that stuff I wanted you to remember. Okay? Now look at the last part of verse 1. And the second thing that Luke points out to us is that Paul then does what? And what does he do? What the
He
last
answered
part?
for himself.
Huh?
He answered
Yeah.
for himself.
I know, but he does what?
He stretched out his hand.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
The first thing you know, Paul stretches out his hand as he began to speak. Now, all of you should know me well enough by now that for Luke to say something about that really doesn't add to the story. He stretched out his hand. I got to know why.
Yeah.
I got to know why Luke feels it important enough to say that, because all he had to do was say, "You have permission." Then Paul began to defend himself. He could have said it. Why does Luke take the time to point that out to us? Remember, that's one thing I'm always telling you. When you're reading Acts, ask yourself, why did Luke put that one little tidbit in? Because he does it throughout it. So why? Well, it turns out there are several reasons. There are several reasons as to why Luke would want us to know this. Now, the obvious reason is because, see, this was a traditional orator's gesture when he would begin to speak. A Greek orator, a speaker, would stretch out their arm. And they stretch out their hand or their arm like that because it commanded attention and respect for the one who's getting ready to speak. And in doing this, it signaled the formal start of a dignified speech, okay? So that was a typical thing. But there's a second reason as to, stretch out your arm. I believe that Luke is talking about because it's an acknowledgement of authority. Now let's not forget, Paul is in chains. When he's brought in, he is in chains at this point, standing before who? Who's he standing in front of?
King Agrippa.
King Agrippa, along with the prominent men of the city, Jewish and Gentile. There's Bernice, and also there is Festus, okay? All right? So the thing is, he's doing all this. These are people who are what? What did I tell you? They're showing their what? Remember I told you I would remember this, so I was going to come back to it. How important
they are.
How important they are. See, Paul's now he's not going to allow these chains or this situation to now take anything away from the importance of what he is about to say. Their importance at this point doesn't matter anymore. Paul's not concerned with their pomp and pageantry. He's not concerned about their prominent status. What he's about to say is going to be more important than any of these important people, okay? But to me, the biggest, most important reason as to why Luke makes sure that we know this, because you see, in the Bible, in the Holy Scriptures, an outstretched arm or hand symbolizes God. In the Bible, an outstretched arm symbolizes God's active, powerful intervention within a situation, while indicating God's personal involvement within the life of the person at that moment. It indicated God's active deliverance, salvation, judgment, presence, and readiness. Or more importantly, God's now ready to act. And once again, the importance of these people doesn't matter, because God's about to do a great and wonderful thing at this moment. Okay? That's why, all that stuff they show is important. In the end, it's not going to matter. All that matters, Paul's now going to say, what I have to say is important. And it's greater because it's of God. And it's going to be greater than anything that you have ever heard before. And finally, just two other things I want to add to it. Two things. First off, most likely it was Paul's right arm that he stretched out, because the right arm symbolized power, authority, honor, and blessing, okay? Remember, you always have the right hand of God. That's the power hand. But one other thing I did find out. Now, when he would have done this, what he would have done, he would have taken his little finger and his ring finger. And what he would have done, he would have placed them in the palm of his hand, and he would have done that. Now, why he does that, I couldn't find out. So that's your homework assignment. See if you can figure out why they would have done that. One of the commentators pointed out that they would have taken those two bottom fingers, placed it in the palm of his hand, and held his hand out like that.
Did Paul just do that, or did
Paul
they all
did
do that?
No, Paul did. Everybody, I guess.
Everybody does
And
it?
do you think he did that?
No, I don't know. I think it would be more like this.
Or like
Holding
that?
it out like that. I don't know. But that's what they said, is that the ring finger and the little finger would have been in the palm of the hand.
I can't
And
even
they
do
would have
that.
held the two fingers and the thumb out. Why? I'd love it if y'all could find. I couldn't find out why. But if you can find that part, you at home, let me know, okay? So anyway, it's very specific with this.
I know.
But now look at verse 2. Is here now we see Paul do something once again that he's not done before, okay? This time as he stands before Agrippa, he now proclaims that he is what?
Happy.
Okay, hang on to that. That he is fortunate, blessed to be standing there. I like the King James Version. It says, I think myself happy.
Yeah.
I like that one. I think myself happy to now be standing in front of you, King Agrippa. Basically giving him a compliment as he's standing there. But the reason is why this stands out. Because up to this point, Paul has not been quick to hand out compliments, has he? Hand compliments to see him, any judges, governors, religious leaders, even when he had, Felix. Remember, he said, yeah, I know who you are. After Tertullus went on and on and on, bragging about what a great governor Felix is, Paul stands up and said, yeah, Felix, I know who you are. And basically then goes on. All right? But see, this is kind of unusual. Because for the first time he's doing it, he's happy. Other time he was cheerful. There was another time cheerful with it all. But he does it. He sees himself as fortunate now. But look at verse 3. But as we see, Paul does not see himself as fortunate just standing before Agrippa because he's a king. He sees himself as fortunate because Agrippa recognizes what two things?
Jewish
Or,
customs, all Jewish customs and controversies.
All right, very good. Has everybody got that? You see, Agrippa is an expert, has knowledge about Jewish customs and controversies. Anybody got anything different besides customs or controversies?
Customs and questions.
Questions.
Okay, all right. Well, see, Agrippa knows about Jewish customs. But more importantly, he would then know about what? He'd know about the Jewish law. He'd know about Jewish law, and he'd know how to interpret them, okay? But Agrippa, he says he knows about the controversy, the questions concerning. Well, see, concerning Paul, there's these controversies, questions going on about him. You see, even though Agrippa is officially given the job as king by the Roman government, placed there under the watchful eye of the Roman governor, it is the king, King Agrippa, who then gets to appoint the one who will serve as high priest. And so it's 100% sure Agrippa knows what? He knows everything about who?
The Jews.
Well, not just the Jews. He knows everything about who? What one person?
Jesus.
No.
Paul.
Paul. Because Paul's been the number one. For 2 years, he's been the only thing on the front of their hateful little minds. We got to kill Paul. Got to find some way to do it. It's pretty sure, pretty good bet, that he knows all about Paul. Now the question is, why would these two things make Paul happy at this point? Well, see, as Festus already admitted to us, he has no idea what's going on. Finally, Paul now has someone he can present his case to who understands the matters concerning Paul, especially his innocence concerning Jewish law. Which is why in the very last part of verse 3, Paul asked Agrippa to do what?
Hear me
Very
patiently.
patiently.
All right, very good. Listen patiently to what he's about to say.
Mine says BESEECH.
Beseech.
Beseech. Beseech you, all right, to be patient. To patiently what? Listen to what he has. I beseech you to patiently, wait for me.
To hear me out.
To hear me out. But it's here that we must understand Paul's true intent on asking Agrippa to listen patiently to him and why he is happy. Now remember, Paul has no intention of ever doing what?
Being disrespectful.
With being disrespectful. But he also, y'all should know this, we've talked about this before. Paul has no intention of ever doing what? Of getting himself set what?
What?
To prison.
Oh, to prison?
Set, not sent. Set. I'm sorry, I didn't say it correctly. He has no intention of ever being set free. Remember, he never has an intention of getting out of all this, being set free. Because Jesus has given him an order. Remember, we talked about it. That where he says, you must go to Jerusalem, and then you must go on to Rome. Okay? Jesus has given him an order. He's going to be obedient to that order, even if it kills him in the end. Okay? In order to not just go to Rome, but he will stand before who? Kings, emperors. He's going to stand before Caesar himself. So he's never, ever really intended to go free. He knows he needs us to go to Rome. But the question now becomes, though, because he's even saying to Agrippa, will you patiently listen to me? Why is it important to Paul for him to continue, though, to claim his innocence when he never has an intention to go free? Why do you think it's important? Because Paul, for every time, he's never once said, yeah, you're right, send me to prison to Rome, and he's fought it tooth and nail because he's never been guilty of breaking Jewish law or any law. And he's fought it all the way for over 2 years. Why was it important for him to continue, though, to claim his innocence then?
Would people not see him as being more believable that he hasn't
Very
done?
good. Yeah, more believable. Very good. Because he still wants who to see him in what way? Remember, he is also, first and foremost, a Jew. And I believe that what Paul is always wanting, because who's the first group that Jesus told him to always go see? Go see the who first?
The Jews?
The Jews. Go see the Jews first. And like Denise just said, if he maintains his innocence and continues to prove it, he'll still be more relatable then to the Jewish people. He still wants to keep what? His good name. He wants to keep his good name. This is why as we go then into the next section of this chapter, we're now going to see Paul give another basic speech concerning his innocence, and he's going to repeat himself a couple of times. But this time, the situation Paul finds himself is going to require him to do something else. See, it's with this, we're now going to find Paul doing more than just giving a testimony or a witness. He's going to now follow through with the complete, true call that Christ has now put upon him. He's going to identify the ministry and the mission of the church and what we're supposed to be as Christians. The most part, he's going to reveal the purpose of his mission, the mission of the church, by doing something very specific. What he's going to end up doing, he's going to end up tying his ministry and mission directly back to Israel's birthright and original purpose, which was to take the message of God into the world. Okay? But more importantly, what do you think is really going on through Paul's mind then at this moment? See, Paul knows, once again, for the very first time, he now has the opportunity to do what? To witness to a king. And he's not going to let this stop him. How many times have we had a chance to speak to somebody and we allow our circumstances to stop us? Paul ain't going to do that. So we're going to stop here. I went a little longer than I intended to. I apologize about that. But we're going to pick up with verse 4 next week. And we're going to go back through his, because there's a lot of things, though, that he's going to bring out. Because this is not your typical, I am innocent speech. He's going to start tying everything back to where it all started and what the purpose is supposed to be. And we're going to look there in the King James Version. The King James Version has a different verse in it that many people before, in fact, when everybody was using the King James Version, they considered it to be the saddest verse in the entire Bible. We'll look at that next week as well, okay? So you at home, thank you for being with us tonight. Please come back and join us next week. Get into this more good stuff with Paul. So thank you for being patient with us, staying with us. Take care. God bless, and goodbye.